All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adbookdown.
This is Merps. Hope you guys are having a fun week. Hope you guys got lots of number ones in Battlegrounds,
Hope you
and
guys
also
are
might have
ready
played this
for
other
more Battlegrounds
arena.
discussion because that's what we're doing today.
Yeah,
You
okay.
notice
So
that you were talking about Arena and I just cut you off? We shouldn't
I
even
know.
mention that we're not going to talk about Arena, but
Well, it's the other mode. It's the other game
there's
mode.
no other mode. There's until Blizzard does something in the arena, like acknowledges that a class has been 56% plus win rate for the past like 2 months. There's no game mode.
All right. Well, nothing new is happening in the arena. Everyone is just sort of patiently waiting for the next expansion to come out. We're waiting for the
Or
card
for the
reveals.
micro adjust that they promised when they got rid of
I know.
buckets. They were like, we're gonna micro adjust quicker now and more frequently, maybe. Definitely quicker, but also maybe more frequently. Instead, there just hasn't been no micro adjust, period. Since they
And
got rid
if
of
you
buckets.
go to Arena HS, you'll see a lot of complaints about how this arena meta is really, really bad. Understandably so. It is not a great meta right now.
It's definitely below average. It's not
Yeah.
like the worst meta.
No, I don't think it's the worst meta. But you have an arena that is pretty stale, and I don't think anyone can say anything different. And you have a shiny new game mode that is legitimately fun. So,
And you have Constructed, where the top 3 posts on the main Hearthstone Reddit right now are about how bad Constructed play is. One is about how bad like wild play is, and 2 are about how bad regular standard is. Like this is it's just all I don't know, fires everywhere except for Battlegrounds, which is hugely unbalanced, but it's a new game mode and everyone's having fun with it. And if you're not
yeah.
having fun with it yet, go play Battlegrounds.
Yeah.
I have yet to hear someone who like played, I'm gonna give it 6 rounds of Battlegrounds and then came away and was not like, this game mode's a 5 out of 10 at least.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people are, even the people that don't really like it, they see the value in it. They see the potential in it, but they're just like, okay, it's just not for me. And then there are people like you and me, which were very skeptical and then completely bought in and recognize how fun it is.
Yep. This is not like Constructed. In Constructed, I'm like playing a game mode. I'm like, I recognize that this game mode for me long term is going to be below a 5. Like definitely 100%. There's nothing they can do with Constructed to make it like even hit a 5 out of 10 for me. It just they can't do it because it's Constructed. It's limited by its format. But yeah, Battlegrounds is a breath of fresh air. And don't worry, guys. Don't unsubscribe from the Lightforge podcast if you are a hardcore Arena player who want to listen to Arena on the Arena podcast. And all of a sudden, we're only talking about Battlegrounds. This will actually be the last Battlegrounds episode for a while because the new expansion, they're going to start releasing new information about cards starting the middle of next week, or I guess towards the end of next week. And so for the next podcast, we'll be back talking about Descent of Dragons and what's going to happen in the arena for that. And it'll be a mostly, I'm going to say arena focus. Anytime we review or talk about the expansion, I'm going to call that arena content because you can't review it from a Battlegrounds perspective because you don't know which of those cards are going to be in Battlegrounds, if any. It's just kind of like a totally separate thing.
Yep.
So yeah. So arena stuff coming next week and the week after that. And of course the week after that is our giant, huge, like 6-hour thing. So we're still gonna be here. We're just taking a short, very Battlegrounds focused break here.
Definitely. All right.
Speaking of which, somebody, since the last time we talked on the Lightforge podcast, somebody did something.
Yeah, so I actually dipped into the top 100 on Friday for like a brief period of time. I think it was literally an hour because I was number 98 and then I got surpassed. And I just have not played enough to keep it. So I'm hovering around, 120-ish? My current MMR is 6150 something, 6150 something, which is pretty good. And I've been playing a decent amount. I'm getting into the games with all of the top players, a lot of repeat players, and it's so refreshing. It's so great to get this high level of competition all the time. And I've seen a lot of pro players and a lot of streamers. For example, I faced Firebat, Regis, Asmodai, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just tons of fun knowing that you're, like still performing well in the highest levels of competition.
Okay. So Merps will anchor the authority of this podcast on he knows what he's talking about with Battlegrounds, at least to the point where he get top 100. I will anchor this podcast from the 5,000 rank, which is where I still am. That's pretty much where I was at the last time we did a podcast. And it's not that I haven't been climbing. I've been climbing very, very consistently. And it's not even like I haven't been playing. I've been playing, not like a ton, but like a decent amount. It's just really freaking hard to earn MMR when you're locked. Like you played enough runs in the beginning, and they've just locked me at like 5,000 ish. It's gonna take like hundreds of runs for me to like get out of this MMR. So that's not gonna happen. I'm just gonna chill here. I don't know if I belong in the top 200 or not, but I definitely belong higher than where I am, because I think for an entire day when open beta first started, I averaged second place out of like more than 10 runs. Now, meta update at around the low 5,000s, it's kind of back to where it was towards the end of closed beta in terms of difficulty. I'm now once again averaging like third place instead of second place. So yeah, I will provide the perspective from a meta where people kind of suck, but don't suck as much as they did a few days ago.
Sounds good. Before we get into my top 5 tips to get you to top 100, I think we should highlight one upcoming change to Battlegrounds. This has been confirmed by Mike Dene in a Reddit post, a short Reddit post. If you guys don't know, there is a subreddit for Battlegrounds called Bob's Tavern. And also he was on Asmodai stream and confirmed that this upcoming Tuesday, which is November 19th, there are going to be a few changes to Battlegrounds. Number one, minions are going to be moving around in some tiers. I would not be surprised if things like Nightmare Amalgam or Junkbot, etc., some very powerful minions currently move up a tier. So we don't know exactly what the movements are, but we know on Tuesday there are going to be movements. On Tuesday, there should also be buffs to demons and murlocs.
Yay.
I know. As you guys know, mechs are definitely the way to go. Beasts are pretty good. Demons and murlocs, there's individual problems with both of them. Murlocs can be, they are by far the most powerful end game units, but they can never get there. The bridge is just not there. I have never ever seen anyone get end game murlocs in a high elo game. It is actually impossible. You will just die.
I used to see it all the time, actually, before open beta started. Now people aren't even trying it. But back then it was like at the ELO around like 5,000, you have enough space that you can actually not die while going for endgame murlocs, and then it secures your number one position, right?
The scaling there is much slower, right?
Yeah.
So you can survive. Just getting some beefed up minions.
You're once you get to like your second turn as at 10 mana, so about 10 turns in, the scaling really starts to look different than the top player games. Like they're just not. I don't know. People just aren't scaling correctly.
Yep. And then for demons, the problem is they just don't scale well. They actually crush mid game. They're really, really good mid game. But what the problems with demons is once other people go mechs or light fang and you stay with demons, you are just going to scale a lot slower. And in the early late game, you just get crushed.
So Merps, what do you mean by scaling for those battleground noobs?
Definitely. So this is what I want to point out. Because we're going to have a slightly in-depth battleground discussion, I will definitely explain some terms, but I am assuming that when I mention specific cards, you know what they do. When I mention heroes, you know what their hero powers do, and you have a basic understanding of how the game works. That's what you need to understand coming in.
And if you don't, like, you listen to the last Lightforge, if you listen to the last Lightforge podcast, you know all that, minus like the heroes and the cards. But if you play Battlegrounds, you kind of know the heroes and the cards, or watch Battlegrounds, you would know the heroes and the cards. There's really not that many heroes and cards.
I'm gonna be throwing around some terms, and I can explain them when it comes up. Let's talk about scaling first. That is a term that is you're gonna hear a ton. And scaling is your growth, the speed of your growth, the speed that your board becomes more powerful. So if you are using up gold every single turn to only buy up the minions that add, let's say, +2/+2 to one minion,
Mm-hmm.
or add, let's say, +1/+1 to two individual minions,
Yep.
your scaling is not going to be very
Your
good
scaling
because,
is 2 coins
Mhm.
for 4 stats, or
Yes.
1 coin for 2 stats. That is standard base level scaling. Everybody can have that scaling.
Meanwhile, other people in the game will have Lightfang Enforcer and Bran. So those people are getting constant. Well, Bran just gets double whatever you're
Okay.
getting.
Yeah. So let's pause and do the math here. So Bran
Yeah.
makes it so that you get for 1 coin instead of 2 stats, 4 stats. So you're scaling twice as fast, and on literally everything, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Because if you get a better buff, it'll scale it double too. And Light Fang gives you, I would say, usually +6/+6, possibly +8/+8 if you have enough like amalgams, or if you're truly going Menagerie. Menagerie, by the way, means you go all tribes. And Light Fang gives +2/+2 buffs at the end of each turn to one of each tribe. So
Right.
you can get +8/+8, and that's just a one-time commitment of 3 coins.
Yep, exactly. And I would say right now, the most powerful build is Menagerie. If you can get the early Light Fang Enforcer is, uh, in my opinion, and I think in many people's opinion, just the most powerful minion in the game right now. A lot of people will say it's like, oh, Nightmare Amalgam is the best unit, and it's the most flexible. But in terms of one minion winning the game for you, or like significantly raising the chance that you win the game, it's a Light Fang Enforcer. So that is scaling. That is your growth. And when we talk about scaling, there's a little subtext underneath it that is, when we talk about scaling, it's all relative to other people. So right now, Lightfang Enforcer is sort of the scaling king. And then if the meta were to change significantly and there's something better than Lightfang Enforcer, or they take Lightfang Enforcer out, and every turn, let's say 2 gold for +3/+3 is pretty decent. Well, that's scaling for you. So that is the term. All right. Should we get into my top 5 pro tips for getting top 100, or do you have any questions?
Okay, I wanna talk a little bit more about scaling and what it does, because we just kind of like define scaling in case someone like really had no idea what was scaling. But if you look at how scaling works, it has like a couple of implications on what you're doing in the end game. One is that some buffs are not really all that great. So the micro, what is that? The 4 mana 3/1 mech? Is that called again? Micro something?
What? Replicating Menace?
Replicating Menace. There we go. The Replicating Menace, like buffing
It
onto one of
spawns
your minions.
microbots.
It spawns microbots. Okay, so it's the 4 mana, or in this case, it's the third tier mech that's 3/1 and gives you 3/1/1s when upon death rattle. So that is 3 coins if you use it as a magnetic, and it goes away. Remember that 1 coin is +1/+1. So 3 coins, you should get a total of 6 stats. You get 4 stats and then 3 microbots. What that means is for that to even break even as a buff, as a normal like whatever like buff, you would actually need to summon one of the microbots. You have to have space for it. If you can summon 2 of the microbots, then it's very slightly better than than a normal buff. Now, in reality, what you're trying to use it for is something like to make it work with junk bots and buff your junk bots, right?
Right.
Or to use it to
It's a
buff
junk
other
bot
stuff. But
buff.
like what you should recognize is that it is like it's a synergy card. As a buff itself, it's not very good at all. It's like a very low tier buff unless you have the synergies for it. And there are only 2 synergies for it. It's the Guardian. Cobalt Guardian?
Cobalt Guardian,
Yeah, it's
yes.
the Cobalt Guardian, which will, because it spawns a mech, so it'll give it Divine Shield again. And it is the Junk Bot, especially if you have the room for it. If you don't have those cards, and or you are not like looking to get those cards, like let's say you're trying to buff it on an Amalgam, it's not a very good buff. Like that's something that I think is not intuitive for new players, or for for new players in the Battlegrounds, because generally people really like Magnetic. But it's a good early game buff because you have the board space, and later on it's just kind of a okay buff.
Okay. That doesn't really have to do with scaling. That's just sort of how good something is.
Right, but I mean I think that's right, but that's if you need to understand scaling to know that that doesn't scale you up as hard, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah. That's fair.
Because like like it's not very difficult to say like, oh, if you get a if you have a bunch of Murlocs, you have a Murloc that gives +2 health to everything. That scales really well because you're getting like 8 stats. Like yeah, sure, like
Yep. All right. And lastly, for the news, before we got off on this little scaling discussion, probably the biggest change that's coming is they are coming in with 4 new heroes on Tuesday: Elise, Finley, Brand, and Syndragosa. And they're rotating out the top 4 heroes currently. So they're going to take out the 4 current highest win rate heroes. So I expect something like Curator to be gone. It's hard because I don't know what the win percentages are for everything overall. Because I think if you ask a lot of the top players what the most powerful heroes or characters are, everyone will agree that Curator is there. But for high elos, I think Dancing Daryl is going to be at the top or near the top for a lot of people. But if you go to the general sort of, player pool, Dancing Daryl performs, I'm guessing, pretty terribly because he plays very unintuitive, and it's a lot of really, really sort of quick math and knowing your position, knowing a very specific strategy. So I'm guessing characters like Daryl, which could be very, very, very powerful in the right hands, are going to be staying, but other characters like um, uh, Maleficent Manastorm or the Curator, they are potentially
wait.
moving out.
Okay, they're moving out. I was about to say, Mana Storm is so easy to use. There's no way Mana Storm's not top
Yeah.
5 for regular players.
No,
Um,
they are probably the ones moving out.
yeah, so as usual, Blizzard is kind of balancing for the average player, or maybe the slightly above average player, but not for the very top, which is fine by me. But
Yep.
it does mean that you like, and so it goes back to what this game mode is about, right? This is not a turn-based game. This game is about APM and really quick thinking. Really quick thinking involves strategy, but also really quick clicking, really quick reacting, really quick reading. This is like a very time-intensive kind of game. You don't have any space to think about things on most of your important turns. Um, so something like Daryl, right, which involves a ton of APM, a ton of thinking, a ton of like just like no, doing a lot of stuff within the time limit you're given. Um, it's it's going to benefit top players because that stuff is harder than just like everything gets +1/+1 if it's a mech. But what it also benefits is people who have the skills that Battlegrounds is testing for. Many of which is not about like long-term strategy, right? Like a lot of it's a mix of long-term strategy and quick thinking and quick clicking. So it's very much like RTSs.
Yeah, the um you will get so much better exponentially by just playing the game because you will know what minions to expect, and you will know sort of how to take in the information and process the information so much better. So if you are playing, getting a little bit frustrated, you're like, I don't have enough time, that the game will slow down for you so much just by you playing and you knowing the strats, you knowing sort of the flow of the game as well.
Well, but the game
So
slows down and you have more other things to think about. So I'm still not at the point at which I'm out of things to
true,
think
but
about.
you have more time to think about those things,
Right.
which is good. At the very beginning, you don't even have time to think. You're just reading and sort of being like, "What is this? How do I do that?" And then just trying to take it all in because everything is new for you.
Yeah, but
So
the difference is between this and let's say something like Arena or Constructed is in Battlegrounds, on most of the important turns, you don't have enough time to fully think through, and your decisions may very well be different if you had triple the amount of time. In the Arena or in Constructed, that's just not true. You
definitely
basically have
accept the
enough
fact
time.
that you have to make pretty good decisions a lot of the times because like we talked about last week, you have to make a chain of decisions every single
Hmm.
turn in the mid and the late game. So you have to think, okay, this is a pretty good decision. I'm going to do it. Okay,
Right,
this is a pretty good
right.
decision. I'm going to do that. That's what you have to
Yeah,
do rather
but
than the
that's what I
arena in
mean
which
by
you
it's testing
roll it
for a
over.
different skill. It's not testing for
Sure.
who can make the best decision. It's testing for who can think and react the fastest and come up with something halfway decent. And you can improve either by being faster or by making your halfway decent strategy better, right? Either way, it works to improve. And so you could be like 5 times better than the other guy if you were given all the time in the world, but that doesn't really help.
Nope.
Instead, you could also be someone that clicks things 5 times faster with some direction, and you'll be just as good as someone who's thinking 5 times faster. It's 5 times better.
All right. So I think that's a good head start to the top 5 tips. These are things that will change on Tuesday. So I don't want to talk too much about specific units or specific meta stuff. And I think what will happen on Tuesday will seriously shake up the meta. No
Yeah,
idea how long the
but just
beta
talk about
is.
fundamentals,
Yeah, exactly.
because
No
this is
idea.
also not exactly like other auto battlers, from what I gather, in terms of
No,
end game
there's huge
strategy or like
differences.
especially early game strategy and all that stuff.
Well, the biggest difference is the econ.
Yeah,
There's
there's
no
no
true
econ.
econ here.
It's
All
not
right.
that hard to build an econ. If they wanted to, they could build it in.
Yeah, they could. For example, one of the things they could do is right now you have to use all of your gold in a turn. There's no way to save, right?
Hmm.
But let's say if you don't use gold, you don't get a 1-to-1 ratio of keeping them, as in they add coins to your hand. But let's say it's um, sort of a 1/2 rate, right? I'm not saying you use it, but it does introduce a little bit something. It's like in the late game, if you aren't using a certain amount of gold, then you get to keep it, like a little bit of it.
The
So
late game, is that really a problem in the late game? I feel like in the
no,
late
it's
game you're
not.
re-rolling anyway. Like you're not
Yeah,
really
yeah.
having very inefficient use of gold. It's really in the
Eh,
mid game and the early game
no,
when
that's why I don't think it will be very relevant. But who knows? Like they could introduce strategies, they could introduce heroes in which using coins has some benefit to it, right?
okay. No, but
So
yeah,
it's
so
setting up a foundation that is not really relevant right now, but could be in the future.
okay. I mean, right now the way econ works in this game. So econ, if you guys don't know, is just like the ability to manage how much resources you have by saving. The game doesn't allow you to save, but there are like not there's not a button that says save, right? But the game does allow you to save in some ways. The easiest way to save is to buy a card, right? You have 3 coins, you buy a card. At some point, whenever you have board space, right, you can just sell whatever you put into your hand for 1 coin. So you manage to turn 3 coins now into 1 coin later. This is not a great ability to save, but if you have nothing else to do, and you don't need anything from the rank that you're currently at, just buy something. If you have board space, put it on the board and just like aim to sell the next turn. It's better than just re-rolling for stuff when you don't want anything of the lower tiers or your
Yep.
odds are so low.
And that's good. That actually segues into the first of my top 5 tips. And I organized these top 5 tips based on their simplicity to sort of how much skill you have to use to implement these.
Okay.
Because the first one is just easy. It is an identification, but if you are just beginning Battlegrounds, you might not be aware of this. The first is just how important tokens are in the
Mm-hmm.
early game and the early mid game. This is the reason why that if you are given the choice during your first turn to buy something like a Murloc Tidehunter or an Alley Cat, you probably want to buy that because, like what Abductus said, each unit in the game effectively costs 2 gold because you buy it for 3 and you can sell it for 1. So it really costs you 2. Now, obviously, there are some units that once you buy, you keep it forever, but you always have the option to sell it. So it's still effectively 2. Tokens or token generating minions are 1 because you buy it for 3 and you get 2 tokens, you can sell them for 2. And the thing is, in Battlegrounds, unless it is an amalgam that you happen to luck into, for example, on turn 3, there is almost like 0% chance that the stuff that you are buying in the early game is going to make it into your final composition. Demons a slightly higher chance, but because of that
It's more
reason,
because the final demons all suck anyway.
they all suck anyways. So the tokens that you buy in the early game, the Owlcat and the Murloc Tidehunter, them being cheap because you have to use your gold at the beginning. You can't save them. So if you're able to spend your gold and turn it into more future gold, that is so much better. And yes, the Alley Cat loses to a lot of units. The Murloc Tidehunter also loses to the 2/4 taunt at the beginning, the Vulgar Homunculus. But a lot of times that 2 chip damage to the face in the first couple of turns is well worth the extra gold at the very beginning. So in the early game and also the early mid game as well.
Yeah,
Let's say
I was about to say, this is not just like a turn 1 thing, because in the turn 1
no
thing, if you
no
have
no
the
no.
option, you buy it. But even later on, as long as you have the board space, this is a great way to do econ, right? We were talking about how the game doesn't let you do econ, and Merps is proposing something where you can like use 2 coins to like basically buy a coin that you can use later. Well, here you're using 3 coins to buy 2 coins. It's an even better deal than what Merps is proposing, and it's already in the game. The only caveat is you do need the board space.
Yep. And the one play that is that you should know about in terms of tokens is on turn 3. It's very common for people to tech up or to upgrade their tavern tiers to the next level on your second turn. And on turn 3, you have somewhat of an awkward 5 mana. So on that turn, it's really useful if you can either buy a token generator on that turn, or if you already have a token, you sell the token or one of those that is being generated, like one of those units, and then you are able to buy another unit in the shop as well, which should put you a little bit ahead of someone who is not able to do that and didn't have tokens in the early game. So they have to either roll and buy a unit or just buy a unit and not really do anything. So that is the best example of how tokens are really good. But like Adulta says, they are just good in the mid game as well. When in doubt and you have to sort of buy units, buying tokens are never a bad idea just because of the savings that you get and your ability to turn gold right at that moment, which is not worth it to you if the shop is that bad, into gold that you can use for your actual final composition.
Yeah.
So that's tip number 1.
So going off that, what that means practically speaking is, you know how you're re-rolling and then you get to a point and then you have 3 gold and you're like, I gotta buy something here. Look at your board, see if you have something that you can sell. If you do, then maybe re-roll again to try to get an end game stuff. But if either you're in a place where you're re-rolling but there's nothing really you're re-rolling for, or you just don't have anything you want to sell on the board and there's a token that's one of your options, like it's a tier 1, minion doesn't look that great, but just buy it. Put it on your board, keep it in your hand if you have to, as long as you foresee a future in which you do have 2 spots on the board to sell it. It'll be a much better choice than re-rolling 3 more times and then maybe freezing it.
All right.
But before you move on from, is your next point about econ too? So if you can't tell, Merps did not send me his outline before this, so I'm kind of running blind here. But I have one more econ point to make.
Okay.
So going off the value of minions as one coin, right? Let's look into the math of the combining minions. So everyone likes getting 3-0s. It's really
Nope,
nice.
nope, don't talk about that. All right, second
What do you
point.
mean? Why don't you? So okay, let's talk about that. That's econ. What's your second point? Is it econ related?
No, that's my third point. The triples.
What's your second point?
Tempoing in the mid game.
Okay, let's do your third point second then.
No, because I think
tempoing.
tempoing mid game is a lot easier. I'm going by how hard it is to sort of.
Okay, but I'm going by
points.
like coins. We're literally on the
Nope.
topic of coins.
Nope, my podcast. Second point, tempoing mid game. Extraordinarily important. I think a lot of people, when it comes to the mid game, this is when they are looking to solidify their final composition. They're like, okay, I know I want mechs now. I know I want beasts now. Let's try to find it. And you really need to be flexible in the mid game. It is totally fine for you to be a little bit nervous in the mid game because your sort of RNG didn't exactly work out. You didn't get the amalgams, you didn't get the metal tooth leapers, you didn't get the cobalt guardians, and you're sort of just stuck there. Let's say you have a couple mechs, you have a couple of beefed up murlocs, and then maybe you have a taunt and then the 4/5 minion that buffs your taunts. You know this is not an end game composition, and you can perhaps be tempted to just keep on re-rolling to search. It's like, okay, I got to find the mechs, I got to find the beasts, I need to start doing that. Be patient, take what the game gives you, just focus on tempo in the mid game, and sometimes you will sort of find it eventually. Sometimes you won't, but if you're aggressively chasing, you will on average get a lot lower position than if you just sit back, trust in the process, trust in your game knowledge to carry you through.
Wait, so what are you saying to do and what are you saying to not do?
I'm saying to tempo. Like,
what is tempo?
Right. So if you have, let's say, 7 gold, right, or something, and then there's nothing in the shop that meshes together, right? You have the 2/2 with the death rattle, give all of your minions +1/+1. You have a raptor here. You have a 4/5 minion there. You have the 4/4 battle cry guy there. Like, just buy all of this stuff up. You don't have a game plan at that moment. Nothing is really sticking out. Don't go chasing for a specific tribe. Don't go chasing for a specific sort of strategy that you want. You got to stay in the game, especially in the mid game. And so just buy up all those beefy minions and then wait for something to come to you. Wait for that pack leader to get to you. Wait for that, the security rover to get to you, the Cobalt Guardians, all of these sort of defining the junk bots. Wait for these defining build cards, and don't go just blindly chasing after them, because that's how you definitely will get 7th or 8th place.
Okay, so basically, if you have board space left, like let's say you have more than one board space left, I usually try to fill my board up to 6. If you have enough space to add more minions before you get to 6, and they're like somewhat relevant bodies, like not 1/1 tokens, then do it before you upgrade. Unless you have like a very specific plan, or like you're upgrading because you froze a triple and you're gonna buy a triple and then you're gonna, do whatever, like slingshot your way to something. Like if you don't have like a very specific plan that you are on the cusp of completing, fill up your board first and then worry about stuff.
Yep, definitely. Don't fall behind in the mid game. I see a lot of people with a really weak board, or I don't say anymore, but I've seen people with really weak boards in the mid game, but they have a theme, right? They have their beasts. Let's say they just
that was totally me for like the first 20 runs. Well, okay, for run number 5 through run number 20. The first 5 runs, I did random stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a guy with like a golden rat pack and another rat pack and another rat pack, but no hyenas, no nothing. They're just rat packing it up, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know what your plan is. I guess you're chasing for that pack leader, but you also don't have taunt. So if that 3/3 gets sniped in the early game, you're just dead. You have
That's
your
why I hate beasts. They're so freaking hard to manage in that mid game area where they're like supposed to be pretty strong, and then they're like actually just bad, like closer to the late game, and then they get good again at the very end once you have a mama bear. Like it's so freaking tricky to like manage.
Mhm. All right, so that is the tip. Now, the third tip, which is what you wanted to talk about, we're going back to econ a little bit. And this is
Okay.
avoiding the trap of the triples. Okay. Do not overvalue triples. I'm going to break it down simply, and then you can talk about whatever that point was. But I think here's definitely something that I've seen. If you go to the Battlegrounds subreddit, Bob's Tavern, you will see a lot of memes about triples, but you will also see a lot of people. It's like, oh, I never get the triples. My opponents always get the triples, and they win because of that. Triples are a trap a lot of the times because let's break down the math. What do you get for a triple? You are spending 9 gold. That is a ton of gold, guys,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the mid game. You're spending 9 gold to get one upgraded minion that only combines 2 of their stats, by the way. Like,
So if you have like a Murloc Tide Caller or whatever, the 2/1 that generates a
Mhm.
token, and you put 3 of them together, then you gain +2/+1, which we've established is worth 1.5 coins, and
Yes,
that's like if you are accepting of a baseline, right? Like everything is gonna beat that or be at that level in terms of buffing.
right. So, uh, what happens is you're spending 9 gold to get an upgraded minion and then a discovery of a minion 1 tier above. Obviously, that's pretty good for certain minions. And let's say if you're on tier 4 and you hit that Bran or Lightfang really early on, like as soon as you get to tier 4, that could just be game winning on its own. And certainly give yourself the chance at getting a triple. Because if you just have two, like if you just bought two Murloc Tidehunters in the early game, anyways, because like we said in point one, tokens are good, and you just happen to stumble upon a triple, that's great. The problem that people get into are they never sell those Murlocs and they aggressively chase for the triple.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously can't see what other people are doing, but in the lower MMRs and elos, I'm sure a lot of people have wasted so much gold trying to go for the triple, and then maybe they eventually get it, and they're like, so much value. This is so good. I got it, and
It's just
and they've
it's not
wasted so
even
much gold
about whether
re-rolling
you
for
like
it.
you don't even have to re-roll it. Like honestly, for the early game minions, for tier 1 minions, even if you get a triple, it's not very good. Because look back on it, you spend 9 gold, right? For 9 gold, let's just assume you were going to spend 9 gold on just lame ass buffs. Stupid normal vanilla +2/+2 for 2 gold buffs. You should have a 9/9 minion, right? For 9 gold. When you put your triple together of a tier 1 or even a tier 2 minion, you end up with what? 4 to 8 stats? You end up with 4 oh sorry, not I'm doing it. 8 to sorry. You end up with 8 to 16 stats, right? 8 stats on average for a tier 1 thing and 16 stats for a tier 2 thing. So you've barely kind of like made up what it would be to buff something. And remember, buffs don't take up board space either. So this uses up a board space, and you've also like barely gotten your values worth. That's with every single triple that you get. So
Yeah.
tempo wise, you're really not getting much out of this. You do get the extra card. The extra card, which if in the beginning, like if you don't get a game winning or like an end game minion that'll stick with you for a long time, it's usually not worth more than like the 3 coins. That it's probably worth less, right? Because you missed. Because you decide what to buy. Here you don't. Like if you miss, that means you got something you didn't really want. And then it's worth like 1 coin plus a little board presence, assuming you have stuff to do on the board. So I'm not saying triples are like bad, but if you have the ability to get tier 1 triples and it costs you like anything at all, you probably shouldn't do it without a very specific plan of like, I am looking for this like X, and I will make sure that I freeze my board, I upgrade, I freeze my board, I upgrade again, or like whatever, right? Until I can like have a shot at like the Light Fang or something, because that's what my strategy revolves around. But tier
Sure.
1 is almost like never do it. Tier 2 is like do it, but don't chase after it. At tier
If
3, you can chase after it.
An opportunity to somewhat significantly improve your board, but you have to sell a pair and give up that chasing the
Yeah.
triple. Do
Do
it.
it.
Do it at that exact moment, unless the triple that you're chasing is a final unit that you want to fuse together, right? Then the
That doesn't
equation
even.
is a little
There's
bit
like
different.
literally 2 such units, right? It's on tier 1 and 2. It's like Amalgam, and it's like maybe the rat,
And
possibly the
with
hyena.
well, this is definitely the hyena. Yeah, yeah. You definitely want, because you can't have hyena take up 2 spaces. That's you just
No,
can't.
no, no. I mean, like for you to save, because to make it an endgame unit, right? Because you'd only
To
save it.
save.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, what would you
definitely.
save? Like, maybe a rat, maybe an Amalgam, probably not a hyena. Because remember,
Uh,
even if you get it, yeah, I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
would you save a
There's other
hyena?
units too, like cyclotrons.
No, no,
I
no.
think.
Tier 1 and 2 units. I'm
Oh,
saying,
1 and 2.
because my whole point is that tier 1 you
The
never save. Tier 2 you like sell at the earliest possible opportunity.
the 1/1 demon that grows and
Okay.
then damages
Well,
you. Yeah.
that's. I think it's questionable whether you want to have 2 of them on the board at any one point anyway for long, because
Oh, you do.
they start hurting
You
you
do.
real bad.
Yeah, and then you just win it. I mean, there's a reason demons are bad, but no. I think that's a legit strategy as well.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a winning strategy, but it's legit, and you
Mm.
dominate the mid game. So yeah, that's the
So around
overriding
tier
thing.
3 is when you can consider like if you have an endgame minion that you want to buff to like actually shoot for the triples. And starting on tier 4 going forward, those are the ones where you can actually chase. But by tier 4 and 5, you are also able to chase like actual upgrades, right? So now when you're re-rolling, you're not like the decision isn't like chase or not. It's whether to chase a triple or take an upgrade. So now you have you have like options, right? Whenever you re-roll, it's no longer
Mhm.
just re-roll for either nothing or I try to hit my triple. Like that's when it's bad.
Yep. So that is tip number 3. Tip number 4, we are going a little bit murkier, and a little bit broader now. Tip number 4 is don't always go for the win. And the subtext to this is also sort of be flexible.
Can we before tip number 4? Can I go back to tip number 3 and actually talk about the math behind the triples?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so when you buy a normal minion, it only costs 2. When you buy a normal minion and you're trying to convert it into to triples, it costs 3. So every time before you're about to purchase your third triple, what you're effectively doing is you're not paying 3 gold, you're paying 5 gold to get 1 gold back, so you're paying 4 gold because you do get a card. So you're paying 4 gold for the upgraded minion. That's all you're doing. 4 gold for the upgraded minion, and you consolidate your board a bit, which is that has benefits. Do you want to pay 4 gold for that? Yes, usually, but just keep in mind that's always what you're chasing. You're chasing the ability to spend 4 gold in order to get a minion that like you won't get anything from selling, because I already built in the 1 gold that you get from selling your upgraded unit into the equation. Like, it's expensive. You do it, but it's just not as great as everyone makes it out to be. Like, you only want to do that upgrade if you are chasing something very specific, or if the unit you're upgrading is a final or like will last you a good amount of time kind of.
Yep. Cool. Maths. Definitely trust maths from Advocata. You saw his math skills earlier on. Okay. Tip number 4, which is don't always go for the win. And part of that is to just be very flexible. And part of that comes from also the way that you think about the game. I'm looking at chat right now, and during the past 40 minutes, I have seen a lot of people sort of trying to add some context and trying to be like, oh, no, Merps. It's like, you always do this, you never do that. Like, one of the comments was, you never merge amalgams. That's wrong. No, you sometimes merge amalgams. And sometimes you also do some things in which you might consider a little bit counterintuitive because you have to. This is the thing that you have to do. Battlegrounds is very, very, very similar to poker. We've used tons of poker analogies in our stream and our podcast, and I think it's very applicable to this game mode because in poker, as you guys probably know, it's not just about maximizing the value you get out of your good hand, it's about minimizing the loss value in your bad hands. So, during the hands in which you lose and someone has a better hand, what you're trying to do is just not lose too much. And in Battlegrounds, whenever you're getting to the high MMRs, one of the best skills is not just hitting that life fang early and then rolling to number 1 and feeling good about yourself. It is salvaging a run to get 4th place when you would have gotten 7th place by playing smart, knowing sort of where you are in the game, and then also just saying, okay, I can't win this game, but I can get stronger. I know my position relative to other people, and I think I can get 4th, maybe 3rd, and salvage this run. And right now,
So,
because other people are scaling so much faster, I can't win, but I can beat these other guys, and that's my game plan right
okay,
now.
before you get to how to do that, just so people who don't intuitively just map this out, it's exactly the same to go from 7 to 4 and 4 to 1 by the MMR system. Exactly the same. So if you get 4 when you think you should have gotten 7 based on your start and or hero combination, that's the equivalent of if you took like an average hero and had an average start and got 1st place. Literally the equivalent.
Yep. So I think a lot of people focus on, going for the win. I think a lot of people, and that's true, right? It's like, one of the common phrases like, oh, don't play to just not lose. That's something that we preach a ton in the arena. No, for Battlegrounds, a lot of times you do just have to play to not lose. And if you aggressively go for the win, you're going to get a ton more of those 7th or 8th places. Um, right now in my games, like my ratio of 1st places to let's say top 4 finishes in the lower elos, I was getting 1st all the freaking time. Now I'm facing a lot of people that are very, very high skill level as well, and I just have to do a lot of damage control. Sometimes I still get 1sts, a decent amount of times, more than 1/8 of the time, significantly more, but definitely not as much as I was in lower elos. And now I'm just like, all right, let's get top 3, let's get top 4. Sometimes let's sneak into the top 2 and then lose immediately to that guy who high rolled. There is a huge amount of value to just doing that until you are the person who high rolls at the very end. Uh, Obviously, with a lot of skill as well, but there is probably, if you are not high rolling, someone else is high rolling. So you're probably not going to beat them, but you can
Okay,
use your skill
just to
to
break
beat
that
everyone
down,
else.
if you are not high
Mhm.
rolling, someone else is high rolling. If you don't get the Light Fang and you're rolling for it and you can't find the Light Fang, that's probably most likely because that's not just a saying. Most likely because other people took the Light Fang because there's only so many Light Fangs in the pool. And when anyone takes a Light Fang, it means there's less Light Fangs available for everyone else to roll. So, literally, if you're not high rolling, someone else is high rolling.
Definitely. So what you want to do here to implement this tip is a kind of an extension of the second tip, which is tempoing. A lot of times you might just sort of resign yourself to the fact that, okay, well, I typically don't buy piloted sky golems. They're typically not an endgame unit, but on this turn, it is really good. Like Pine and Sky Golems are one of the best things that you can buy at like tier 4 as a standalone unit, right?
Hmm.
It's just a good standalone unit. And you can also kind of just high roll with the random 4 drops that comes out. And even if you get something that is not amazing in terms of the 4 drop, it's still a decent body. So you might just try to go in on piloted Sky Golems without a real mech plan, and you're looking at all of your sort of opponents, and everyone is a little bit low, and you're like, okay, if I could just chunk down the next couple of opponents a little bit, I significantly increase my odds that I just make it through this mess. On the high elo and high MMRs, people are really, really good at finding small advantages and surviving. So if you make a strong push in the mid game to try to knock some people out, you probably can. And because with high elo games, it's pretty common to see in the late mid game only one person out and everyone else is at like 10 to 18 health. Like literally everyone except the one guy at the top who high rolled. So if you are in that position, none of you guys are probably going to beat that guy in first place who has the double light fangs and is just like completely wrecking everyone. So at that point, you don't want to roll aggressively to get that dream comp to beat that guy. It's not going to happen. At that point, you're just like, okay, what is the best bang for my buck? And having the information that I have against the other people, how can I just beat them into oblivion and increase the chances that they go out before me? Before you lose to someone, you get 4th or 3rd place. That is your goal right there.
Yep.
And I think even the high elos, a lot of people still want to be a little bit optimistic, which is fine, but you're going to get the best value by sort of knowing where you're at and going for that 4th or 3rd place in the game in which nothing is just going right for you, right? Like you didn't get the tokens early on. You're not getting the power minions. Nothing has popped up to really define your build. So you're like, screw it. I'm going stats. I'm just going to try to beat down everyone. And I'm going to take all of you guys down with me. I'm not winning, but I'm taking all of you guys down with me.
Okay, so 2 points. One is this is not just a high EOO strat. You say that a lot, and but in lower EOOs,
because going for the win early on, if you are good, like it works, right? It works a higher percent chance of the time.
Yes, it works a higher percent chance of times, but you're also much more successful at preventing damage if you want to. Like your security, your chances of hitting number 1 from a disadvantaged position is higher, but so is your chance of getting number 2 instead of number 4 when you play prevent, right? When you play defensive. So I think it's a strategy that's not like any more applicable to high AOs as to low EOs. You're just trading, like you're giving up a higher percent chance to eventually get number 1 or number 2, but you're having a much higher percent chance to get number 2 through number 4.
The difference I see between like sort of 5,000 and 6,000 games is in 6,000 games, there is in the mid game, people are really good at hanging on and just beating each other up. Like you have a ton of games in which everyone is just so freaking close. And in lower elos, I see it tends to be more like
it's a slant.
It's a gradient, right? And in higher ones, everyone is just sort of, my gosh, it is so close, neck and neck. Everyone is beating each other up. There are a lot of ties. But then there is always that one to two people that are just dominating. Yeah. So for the high elos, it's like, dude, if you just recognize that, it's like, all right, I'm not one of the top 2 guys, or I'm not.
But that's the same for low elo. But whether you have a slant shape for your health totals or you have a line shape, it doesn't change your odds.
No, it makes it easier to encounter someone that you can knock out for the next couple of turns. In the big picture, no, like I know what you're saying, but if everyone is super low, you can actually have a greater effect by you buying minions at that moment.
Okay, so you're not talking about 18 health then. You're talking about 8 health if you're like knocking someone out in the mid to late game.
Yeah. So like you see a lot of people, like I say in the like 10 to 18 health range, right? But there are a lot of games in which you have people that are within KO range. Like if you're on level 4,
Okay.
and if just 2 of your minions survive, you knock them out.
Okay, so because I think in that range, it's very hard to deal more than like 14 damage tops, and usually you're dealing like 8 damage when you win. So the range is not as high for knockout. But yeah, okay. So the other point I was getting at, besides the fact that this is not a high YO strategy, this is just a normal strategy that you should do, is to actually put numbers into this. So if you have, let's say your chance of getting first place from a disadvantaged position is 5%, that's pretty generous, I think, right? So 5% of the time you get number 1, the other times you are like similar to everyone else, and let's say you end up, because you're not at the top, you end up with like 6. That's 5% of the time you get, we'll call 3.5 spots higher, right? So you have 0.05 times 3.5. This is compared to averaging in 4.5th place. So that's 0.175 plus 0.95 times what was 6th place be? Minus 1.5, right? Times.
Math.
I do not have an advanced calculator at my hand. This is a simple calculator that cannot do this math that I'm trying to make it do. The point being that it's a net negative EV. Like, you can just run the math with your inputs in it, and it will be negative. It will be significantly negative. It won't even be a little bit negative. It will be significantly negative. If, on the other hand, you can secure even like a 4th or 5th position, like let's say if you go to prevent defense strategy and you are now at, I mean, not prevent defense, if you just go into like, if you turtle up, right, and turtle up by tempoing out and sacrificing any late game that you may have, and you end up with 4.5 position, somewhere between 4 and 5th, you just hit average, and that's your likely outcome for doing that, because you've knocked or they get knocked out like 3 more people or 2.5 more people, which is, I think, what normally happens. You end up with a much higher number. I can't do the math right here with the calculator, but you can try it yourself. I promise you it works. That's
Great.
That's literally the mathematical reason for why you do that instead of chasing number 1.
Okay, so let's talk about the 5th thing, which is scouting. I think that scouting is one of the most important things that you can do, but one of the hardest things for you to do because it takes time away from the many things that you need to do just for your own deck, for your own board. But if you are properly scouting in the early, mid, and late game, you should be scouting all the freaking time. It gives you such a huge advantage. And it's really, really hard for me to talk about specific examples of even mid, but especially in late game scouting. But let me give you an example of how scouting can really benefit you in the early game, which is when you have a lot of time to do it because you don't have many many choices in like the first 3 turns. So on turn 1, you buy a unit, and then you on turn 2, let's just say you click the upgrade button and you wait, or you switch over to Netflix, or you grab your bag of Doritos and start eating. In addition to that, spend a few seconds scouting. Look to the side, and here's what you want to look for, especially. You don't really care if people have the micro machines, if they have the wolves, they have whatever. Look at the people who lost HP in order to find out who has the Vulgar Homunculus in the early game. Because in the first few turns, the Vulgar Homunculus really dictates trays, and that thing is sort of the boogeyman of the first 3 turns. And what you want to do is just look at people that have 38 HP but still tied or won. You can even get more information if their HPs are not 40 or 38. For example, if someone has, let's say, like 36 HP. You're like, whoa, 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 what happened here? And then you can see that they lost to Yogg. And then suddenly you have a ton of information about both opponents because that necessarily, that opponent that has 36 HP, they bought the 2/4. Yogg hero powered into the 2/4 to get a 3/5, and then Yogg beat that guy. And then, so you know that as of that moment, the guy that you scouted has a 2/4 taunt. Yogg has a 3/5 taunt. And the placement of your minions at the very beginning, and also a little bit into the mid game as well, because they're both keeping those units for a little bit of time. It should
Wait,
reflect the fact that they
wait.
have those taunts.
How is that not 2 damage?
Because the 2/4 damages you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh my god, dude. Okay, keep up, keep up. So, whenever
So
you
so
have
if you
someone,
so if you hold on, I'm sure there's people listening to this that are as confused as me about your examples, which you didn't mention.
well,
The
I'm assuming people know what Vulgar Homunculus does. So,
okay. So it involves the Mogre Homunculus hurting yourself and then you losing a battle on top of that to get to
yes,
-4. Okay.
yes. And by you knowing that, you also know what the other person has, right? Like if it's Yogg Saron, you're like, oh, okay, I know that they have the 3/5 taunt now. And this is extraordinarily important because the placement of your minions, your attacking order, um, if you're not accounting for the fact that let's say you're facing Yogg in 2 turns, if you're not accounting for the fact that you are facing someone with a 3/5 taunt or someone with a 2/4 taunt, I've seen people misplace their minions such that, for example, they'll have double 3/1 minions run into the 2/4 taunt. And perhaps, sometimes it won't matter because the random RNG order of the hits, it doesn't matter anyways. But you want to give yourself the best chance possible to either tie or win these early matches to save 2, 3, 4, 5 HP here or there, because that is the difference between winning and losing, and let's say getting third place versus getting sixth place a lot of the times. It's really a razor's edge. So in the early games, you have no excuse. You definitely should be doing this. Search for whoever has the 2/4 taunt, the Vulgar Homunculus, and then search to see if anything weird is going on, like the scenario that I just laid out. In the mid game and in the late game, in the early and late game as well, because in the late game, you don't need to scout. You know what everyone has. Here are things that you want to be scouting for in the mid game. You always want to scout out who is upgrading, like where your relative position is in like with everyone else. Also, you may make your decision on what to do with your turn based on what your next opponent does. There's somewhat this game of chicken that goes on sometimes where you see on the left side who you are going to face. And you may have a decision to make here. You might want to tech up. You might want to go up a tavern, but you don't want to take 14 damage to the face that turn because your board is somewhat weak. So you might just keep your eye on the left side, queue up the turn in your head, be like, okay, well, I can buy this Harvest Golem plus this Raptor, but I really want to tech and I want to see if they tech. A lot of people will just do what they want to do anyways, and that can dictate your turn. And then suddenly, whenever you see the tech up or the tier up button from your next opponent, then you're like, okay, that's good. They're not spending their gold this turn to sort of flood the board and smork me, so I can also tech up. I probably will still lose, but it's the difference in you knowing, am I losing 14 health or am I losing 7 health?
So at what point do you start buying minions?
Uh, I start buying minions with like this is why you have the thing queued up, right? And this depends on your APM or whether or not you still have a decision left to make. If you know exactly what you're doing, if the guy hasn't moved and let's say there's like 8 seconds left, then I'm like buy, spam, spam, and then you're good.
Okay,
For
so
me.
this whole entire fifth point that you have made, every element in here requires an absurd amount of time. because
Yeah.
you are scouting all 7 other players after every single match. You're looking at, they don't give you that much information, but you have to do
This
analysis
is
after
also
that.
the most important thing is scouting your next opponent for this tip, for this specific one, in terms of whether or not you're teching or
Right, right.
whether
But
or
I mean,
not you
overall,
are.
I'm talking about your
Yes.
entire. This is point number 5,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Your whole
Definitely.
entire
Yeah.
point number 5 is why this game is an RTS and it is not a
Mhm.
turn-based strategy game, because you don't have to worry about any of this in a turn-based strategy game. This is Battlegrounds happens in real time. When you roll, that happens in real time, based on what other people have rolled. Like if someone else is
Yep.
seeing something, you don't see it. So if you're both in tier 3, like the person who, well, if you're both in tier 3 in the first roll, it probably won't matter because you're all going to get a roll. But if someone can roll twice before you roll once, then they get to see twice as many chances of getting the most OP tier 3 creature or whatever. And in every single tier, the creatures are not balanced. And that's not like just because Blizzard sucks at balancing. They're intentionally not balanced because they literally have different mana ranges with no, like, there's no one who, if there's no way if they actually tried to make the minions like roughly equal in power levels to each other, it would end up this way. There's clearly good minions and bad minions. And even when Blizzard finally is done balancing everything, there will still be very good minions and very bad minions on each of the tiers.
Right. And
the
there
way
should be
you-
a difference.
Well,
There just shouldn't be as big of a difference as we see with some minions currently. But there should be an incentive for people to tech up higher, right? If everything were even, if all you get are like 1/1s versus on tier 1 versus 2/2s and tier 2s versus 3/3, like then there is actually no advantage to it, right?
well, there is
So,
advantage. You get a 2/2 instead of a 1/1.
Sure. But like there's not a huge gap between all the minions on that tier to incentivize you. It's like, oh, I should be the first one to get to the next tier to get that really good minion instead of like, ooh, I want to get that 4/4 first. And then and then everyone else is like, haha, I have the 4/4 first, and none of you guys have it.
Well, the 4/4 first will eat a 3/3 and then maybe hit another 3/3, right? Like, I'm just saying the
and
game
it's good
doesn't
for
have
that
to be
turn.
that way. It's just
But
it's
right
just
now,
that way
like
with the way
Light
this game
Fangs
is
and Brand
made.
are so much better. Like
The-
they help you with your scaling.
The way
right?
this
Like,
game is made is done in that way in
Mhm.
order to not just incentivize the strategy, but to incentivize the APM. Like, this is where if you have better APM than your opponent, and you can click, evaluate what you need or don't, evaluate again, click again, all of this, it's going to matter a lot on the bottom line when you're scouting.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's
if you can lay. I'm just making a point. I'm not. I'm pointing out that all the scouting that you're talking about here, whether it's a precise scouting on one particular opponent or evaluating literally every possibility of minions that could be used to fight against each other on tier 1 to get one sliver of information, or it's waiting for your opponent to make a move first when you have like 3 more decisions to make after that. None of that is a turn-based strategy game. All of that is what you do in an RTS. You have to react in real time. So let's focus on the part where you actually have some time to do stuff. What are you looking for when the auto battle's going on? Because when it's on your turn, everybody has so much stuff to do. Like, you got to be really, really high up. Because I'm still climbing at my rank. I'm like, what, at this point, 750 points off of top 200. And I'm still climbing, and I do literally none of this last point that you just talked about. I purposefully don't do it because I can't. I'm actually like biologically unable to do that. And I don't think I will ever get to a point where I could do that on more than like the most basic level.
I don't know if biology is holding you back, but
yeah,
I understand.
Like APM is part of biology, right? How fast your mind works is part of biology. That's not. That's just how it is.
I don't know if you're exactly held back to that extent, but
to the extent of not being able to do what you said sounds crazy. You have to look at 7 things on your opponents, then you have to look at all the, like, whether they win or not, then you have to bring into your mind all the entire pool of tier 1 minions, then you have to run matchups over your head with their potential, then you have to do math on top of that. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of things you're doing. Like, you're glossing over it because you're capable of doing it, but the vast majority of human beings in this world cannot do it at that speed, even given enough repetition.
I don't do all of it either, you know.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, you can do
but
some of it, and the degree to which you are good at it will determine how much of that you can do. right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yes, technically in the arena, you can get a better read on the opponent if you run through literally every single card, but you don't have to. There are only certain cards you're like whatever, and you can lump cards into categories and all that stuff, right? So there's ways to simplify things when it comes to doing a read in the arena or whatever, and you have like a ton more time to work through. Here, not only are there no categories that is easy to categorize that you can get a read off of, there are categories. You should remember things like he has a lot of poisonous, or he has divine shields, like that. He has taunts, right? Junk bots. Those are useful like things that you could categorize. But you cannot do any scouting without facing these people in any way, but to brute force it in your head. There is no like shortcuts. You either memorize the top few answers and you try to match a situation with another situation, like my opponent lost by 2 and he has my opponent lost 2 health and he like won the match. That means he has a the 2/4 taunt demon guy. Fine, you can memorize that and then apply it, but if you're running through all the possibilities, that's just a lot of processing power.
By the way, I haven't downloaded and tried it myself, but I have seen streamers. Deck Tracker does Battlegrounds now, and they track the last known board for your opponents. So just like how Deck Tracker helps you and takes away a lot of the memorization from your end when you play Constructed or
Mm-hmm.
Arena, they do that for Battlegrounds now
Yep.
too. I haven't tried it myself. Have you tried it?
Nope, but I will try it. But that's still, again, that's not doing any reads, right? That's just doing memorization for you of the board state that you have already seen.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's not the scouting that you're talking about. You spend maybe 1% of time on that, and 99% time on the parts where you're making decisions, not the part where you're auto battling, and because I could do that. I know when my opponents have poison or when they have a junk bot or like that kind of stuff. Especially towards the end game, you have to do that because that involves what you buy and that involves what you like, how you position stuff. But all the stuff besides that, that's a huge amount of APM. And
Definitely.
I judge games a lot by how much you can get away without APM because that's how much strategy there is in a game, right? Like if you're a game that's max on strategy and that's all that matters, then your APM shouldn't matter, and then you end up being a turn-based game, right? And when I say APM, I include thinking. A thought is an action. So in some ways, all games are APM based because you do have some kind of time, but you're just given enough time that it doesn't really matter, right? In a turn-based game, you're usually given enough time that it really shouldn't matter, except at the very margins. Like you've thought through everything that you can reasonably think through well before the time is up. So, in games like Overwatch, you can compensate for it. In games like StarCraft, you can compensate for it. In games like freaking like fighting games, you can compensate for a lot of the things. So in Battlegrounds, I'm in the middle of seeing if you can compensate for not thinking as quickly and not clicking as quickly. So we'll see.
That's weird. I would think that Battlegrounds is a bit more forgiving in that regard than, let's say, a fighting game, right? I mean, with the fighting game, you just have because you do have a bazillion options at any given point. You play Smash, so let's use that as an example.
But you have like 4 real options at any given time.
Sure,
which is
but
about
just
the
like
same as you have in Battlegrounds.
Yeah, like yeah, it's like you have limitless options, but like just like in Smash, one of your options is not to run off the edge by yourself.
You have
And
4 real options.
Right, your option is not to sell off your buffed
Yeah.
up poison divine shield amalgam.
Yeah. So you would think that in like a fighting game, reaction is more important, but you'd be surprised because this game's like RTS. What is the most APM heavy games that exist? They're RTSs. They're not fighting games. And that's what Battlegrounds is based off of. I keep drawing the comparison between it and an RTS for a very good reason. It's because it is most similar to a RTS. You are building stuff. There is an economy. You're doing this in real time. They're crunching you a lot on the time. You have to do scouting. Like, it lines up very, very well. It's like a simplified version of a RTS. And you don't have to, like, aim much. You still have to aim somewhat. I have messed up on aiming before on Battlegrounds. I sold the wrong thing.
Ouch.
But yeah. So that's a lot of really good tips I think that actually covers like anything that's not a specific strategy, right?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about specific strategies. We're still in beta, and like we talked about, the meta is going to shift significantly, and any specific strategies depend on units and when you can buy them and how you scale. So let's not talk about that. But if you know these tips and you follow them and you practice them, you should just be good in any meta, right?
Yeah.
This
is
is
like the
core foundational
fundamentals
stuff.
of Battlegrounds. This is like in Arena, we tell you what tempo is and what card advantage is, and like what like reach and what survival. Like we break it down for you, right? Like all the like macro units before we're like, okay, that's your basis. Make more of all this stuff and you will win, right? And that's like the basis on which this is the basis of Battlegrounds. There's
Yep.
there's like your economy only happens in a very vague sense. Your tech progression happens on a very meta specific sense, so we can't really like talk much about it generally. So it's really just economy and tempo, like economy versus tempo, economy versus tempo, and these are the considerations that you think about when you're making your decisions.
Cool.
So
All right.
what would you say if you matched up two players, one of whom was well, maybe not number 1. Let's say number 10, and another one is number 200, and you just repeatedly match them up against each other in random 8-player pools for 10,000 matches. What would you say the win percentage of these two players are? Like the difference between the two?
Oh, no, it's incredibly small. Like it's incredibly small. It's like what we're talking about in for constructed, right? In terms of if you look at people's win percentages over the best players, it's like if someone has a 54% win rate versus 53, like that 54% win rate player is like that's so significant, right? It's so significant. But even in a large sample size, it's hard to see it. I think that's what you're going to get for Battlegrounds as well. But if you consistently win, that's good. So right now the MMR system is if you just keep on winning, or if you keep on going higher than just average, right? What you're supposed to do as a top player, then you're going to gain MMR. And obviously, Tides is an incredibly good player, but a lot of it also comes from the fact that he plays a ton, right? And so this is different than some systems in which it's you're able to catch someone regardless of sort of how much they play. Here, because of the fact that Tides is so freaking good, but also he plays a ton, you basically can't catch up with him. So I think the difference is going to be incredibly small, very minute. If we're talking about top 200 versus a top 10 player,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously that top 10 player, if they are able, like, let's say if the rankings are accurate, the difference in that player is really going to be super good scouting, knowing exactly kind of the odds for all of this stuff. Like, okay, like me, they are going to think a little bit ahead and be like, okay, is it worth actually going for the triple to go for the brand or the Light Fang at this specific time? And they will just have a better feel for the percentages there. It's like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
this is like really good. And the top 200 player, like, they will know all of this stuff, and they will be pretty good at sort of identifying whether it's good, but they'll just be a little bit off on how good it is and exactly how much EV there is in that decision. And so that's closer to where I'm at, like I'm pretty good. I know the strats, I can do the scouting, but for the specific numbers, and these come down to, like, let's say those 55-45 decisions in the arena, right? Like when you are looking at the top players, they are going to nail that 55% more often. And that is what the top 10 player is going to do. Like they are going to maximize their EV and really just shave off that little bit that gives them a slight advantage over time. That's significant because you can't really get more than that. But yeah, those are the main
Okay.
differences.
Because I'll put the counterpoint. In Arena, the difference between a top 10 player, like if you average all the times you gave a shit and played the leaderboard, the difference between a top 10 player and a top 200, like number 200, is huge.
Hmm.
It's not just like, oh, this guy's like a sliver better at this game than the other person. It's a world of difference, I think, between a top 200 player and a top 10 player in Arena. I think in Constructed, it's probably less big of a difference, but I still think it sounds bigger than what you're describing in Battlegrounds.
In Battlegrounds right now, well, it's also in Battlegrounds like
Yeah,
right
Battlegrounds
now.
right now.
We have to sort of see how it plays out, and also the game is not settled yet, right? I can pretty confidently talk about Hearthstone, Constructing an Arena as a game mode. Here, it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
we could also see just fundamental changes in the gameplay itself
Mm,
because it is just a beta. But yeah, I think right now it really is just about these percentages because I see I see Battlegrounds very, very much so like poker, right? And you can
mm-hmm.
take,
Yep.
if you're taking a top 200 poker player
Yeah.
versus a really, really good top 5 or top 10 poker
It's
player,
almost the same.
it's almost the same. You're just talking about small percentages
Mm-hmm.
over a huge sample size. But when you're talking about all that money involved, it makes a huge difference, right? It makes a huge difference whether this, you're
Yeah.
looking at a
But
55 or
that's the
54%.
difference, right? Like if you instead talk about like a chess player, the top 10 chess players are way better than the top 200 chess players.
Oh yeah,
So
it's miles different.
on a
Yeah.
scale from, let's not talk like chess to rolling dice, let's talk chess to poker, which is still a game of skill. Like Battlegrounds is, it seems like it leans much more towards poker than Arena or Constructed. And that makes sense. I mean, it's auto battling, but I just didn't have a sense of like how much, because a lot of like the top level, like not strategies, but like also considerations and like stuff, I'm not doing any of it. So I don't even have a view as to like what people are doing or how much better you can get at something or how much that being that much better can actually make a difference in the game.
Yeah, yeah. So once again, this isn't me discounting the skills involved and
Well, no,
even the
it's the
decision
game.
making.
It's a game,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's
Like
the
Tides
game.
could be a million times better than you, but if the game makes it so him being a million times better than you only gives him a
Yep.
0.01% chance better to win, that's how the game is structured.
Right, that's the point I want to make. Right. So in the game, I'm not saying that I'm going to make the exact same decision as Tides
Yeah, and you could be
99%
wrong
of the
when
time.
you guys differ in
Mhm.
decision making, but you're just saying the
Definitely.
impact that it will have on the final result is
Yes.
going to be
Um,
very, very, very small.
is going to be small, significant over time,
Yeah,
obviously.
over a lot
But
of things, but like much
right.
smaller than Arena and smaller than Constructed.
Right. This is totally not like chess in which you put Magnus Carlsen versus a top 200 player. He is going to destroy them,
Right.
right? He is going to
But yeah,
obliterate them.
yeah.
But
But even
no.
compared to like other Hearthstone modes, like
Mhm.
Arena and Constructed, because I think
I agree.
the
I
Arena
agree.
gap is huge, right? Like, well, from our perspective, it's huge.
Yes.
And the Constructed gap definitely exists. Like, I don't think there's gonna be many people who's like, oh yeah, anyone who can get top 200 for like any sustained period of time is almost like just as likely to like uh to prevail as someone who's consistently getting the top few spots, but it's closer. They have a better shot at it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. uh interesting observation. So question from the goat: now that you're so into Battlegrounds, will Arena be making a comeback once Descent of Dragons is launched, or like how's this going? Because I've already stated I'm going to be playing Arena once Descent of Dragons comes out, and
I'm
like
definitely going to play
Battlegrounds as
Arena
like
once it comes out.
a side
Yeah.
thing.
Also, Battlegrounds, I need to see where Battlegrounds ultimately ends up. This is a beta. I think we have to remember this is a beta for Battlegrounds, and it's already pretty polished. It's pretty good.
But what if it ends up nowhere? What if they just keep adding new cards, right? New strategies, new heroes, like rotating the meta around, but not doing anything else with it?
You know what the sad thing is, though, for something like that? So, guys, there is an upcoming $300,000 Battlegrounds tournament with invited players. You get to see a lot of your favorites like Hafu, Dog, and Trump. Uh, and
Yeah, yeah.
you,
Way to name all people from one team.
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
What
oh, the arena
about
people.
Thij? There were like Crip and like
Tides.
Tides.
No,
Oh yeah, Tides,
Crip
the
is
number
not.
one player. Is Crip not in this tournament?
No. No. Tides is not in there
Oh,
either. I thought you
Tides
were
is not
talking
in the
about
tournament.
Taish, which I think is in the player. No, Tides of Time is not in there.
Interesting.
He wasn't invited. This invite came out before all of
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
But like the invite has like a lot of top players.
Yes, but not Crip. So the and I think it's only because Crip is traveling. Otherwise,
Oh, of course. It's an invite. If they can get Crip, they're gonna get Crip. They're only not
so
gonna be able to get Crip if Crip doesn't want to be there and
it
has
is
something
kind
else
of
to do.
sad to me that we have a $300,000 tournament for Battlegrounds, and we have not had anywhere near the support. And by anywhere, I mean not like
Zero.
a single
We have had
dollar
$0.
from Blizzard, right?
Well,
Like we've had a few bucks from Twitch because of Twitch rivals, but
yeah,
Blizzard
and
is
other
shelling out.
organizations.
Yeah, Blizzard is shelling out 300K to do this tournament for Battlegrounds.
And they've shelled out money before for Wild, for standard, for Wild too. Like, not a lot,
Yeah.
but they've done a couple Wild events.
So yeah, it's pretty sad. I'm definitely going back to the arena because I want to play it. I'm curious to see how the new expansion shakes up the meta. But it is one of those things where for Battlegrounds, like I'd be surprised if they didn't continue their investment into this.
Yeah.
And by investment, I mean not just changing it up, but also sort of incentivize. Like we have rolling constant leaderboards for this now, right?
Yeah.
Are they only going to do this tournament and not do any other tournaments? Maybe, but I kind of doubt that. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, geez, I'm definitely going to keep it up if, for example, they have play-in tournaments or if they have kind of, if they try to grow this mode like they've been growing Constructed and Arena. I don't know. Like we haven't seen anything. So if we continue to see nothing, I'll be interested. I'll play it. But if they make Battlegrounds actually competitive with tons of carrots, on a stick in front of me, I'm gonna go chase those carrots, man. If it's money involved, if there's like glory involved, I'm going for it. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Well, I'm sticking with the arena until they come with another turn-based game, which they have yet to do because Battlegrounds is really fun, but it's an RTS in card game form. Yeah, I will. It's really nice to have Battlegrounds though because I've been having like, there's been so many bad metas in the arena like in the last, like basically since they came out with the bucket system. I'm not the bucket system, the wild rotation system. Like more than half of the metas are like somewhere between like pretty bad to like utterly unplayable. And it seems like they're putting less resources in the arena now than they were before. They can't even push a button. I was like, oh, it's BlizzCon. They're not going to push a button then. Well, it's the 17th now, and BlizzCon was the 1st. So that's 16 days to push a button. It's the rebalancing button. It literally is just a button. It's all automated. Apparently the system automatically lowers it, micro adjusts, right? Like there's a button. And one of the perks that they're trying to sell us on was we got rid of buckets and micro adjust can now happen more frequently and definitely earlier if we don't want to do it more frequently. 16 days. This is feels like the speed of the old adjustments, which was painfully slow. And so, in times when the meta is just crap in the arena, I don't know, now I can not have to play the arena. I can play some Battlegrounds instead. But I will definitely start in the arena in every meta and come back to the arena whenever they balance things. But it's a good place to escape and a good place to fill up time. If like at the end of a stream or something, we got like a half hour, put in a Battlegrounds run. So I'm definitely gonna be keeping up with both, just like you. But I'll definitely be favoring the arena side.
Cool.
It's not a turn-based game. It's a weird RTS that they jammed into Hearthstone that happens to be super fun.
All right.
Yeah. It's so interesting that they put it in Hearthstone instead of like, I don't know, any of their other games. But it works. Anyway, any final thoughts on our second and final Battlegrounds only episode for the near future?
No, this is it. Thank you guys for listening. Hope this was helpful. And yeah, guys, just go play it, man. It's a ton of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm probably not touching Arena until
Oh,
the Descent of
yeah,
Dragons comes
neither
out.
am I.
Yeah.
Except right now when we play the Arena Coup. We're still playing the Arena Coup every week.
Woohoo.
We actually did really well last week for having basically no idea what's happening in the meta.
It's fantastic.
Besides that, it sucks, apparently, and Paladins rule. And we were not playing Paladin. Now we're going to play Druid, so
Yay.
we'll see. Okay, we're going to be doing, for the first time in a year and a half, I think, maybe almost 2 years, we're going to be doing a sub drive starting next Sunday for 1 week. Because we checked out our sub numbers. We don't usually like keep an eye on it. We're not like sitting here counting our subs. But it's like super low. And so we're like, oh crap. It's probably because we haven't done a sub drive in a while, and hopefully we can get that number up to something that will allow us to make minimum wage off our content creation. That's the goal. Federal minimum wage. And if they ever increase the federal minimum wage, we're gonna be in trouble. Because we will not be able to keep up necessarily. But yeah, so look out for the sub drive. Also, we have our schedules set for Thanksgiving / launch of Descent of Dragons, and we will be posting that onto our subreddit. We have a subreddit. It's just Grin and Goat, and we read every post that goes up there. It's just not like a super active subreddit. But if you ever want to like get our attention and you like don't want to email us, that's a great way to do it. Yeah. So we'll post it there and then also tweet out something about it. The short thing is the schedule is going to be moved back up to 7 o'clock instead of 7:30. So extra half hour per weeknight of streaming. Once the expansion comes out. The normal like 2 streams before the expansion comes out, the Friday and Monday streams are not going to be there as usual. That Sunday is going to be before the expansion comes out. It's going to be a huge like an analyze everything tier list scores stream, and then we'll be adding a few more days in that first week. We're gonna try to do every day. We'll see if we can make it to be streaming every day after the expansion comes out for a week. I think we could do it, but we'll see. We're going to post it sometime this week, so keep an eye out for that. Yeah. All right. Well, until the next Lightforge, when we will have actual new cards to talk about in Descent of Dragons, and we will also provide an analysis of the cards that are coming in to the next rotation of the arena. All coming up next week on the next Lightforge. Until then, this is Adwicked Up.
This is Merp. See you guys.